to talk this morning about a bunch of things that you're thinking. When you and I started working together on this transition, I thought the coolest thing was that you had the perspective of 16 years, but you could come up with ideas that you didn't actually have to manage as we move forward. So we thought we'd have a pretty good conversation this morning with your best advice all around. But the first thing I'm curious about, we've asked a lot of our attendees to reflect, obviously. I'm just curious about your reflections over the last just few days at LearnX.
So this is, I think, our 5th or 6th LearnX. And as you've said, and as Kathy said, it's usually a relatively intimate gathering with lots of room for private and small group conversations. And on one hand, I am sad that this year we couldn't get together. On the other hand, the team put together a really powerful convening online that highlighted the good work going on around the country and still created room for a lot of one-on-one engagement through the app and chat. And so, well done, and here's to being together next year. My big takeaways are the spirit of sharing that everyone contributes at LearnX. People don't hold back. There's a sense of purpose. And I think everyone who is part of the network has been showing that and conveying that. And I think most importantly, we conveyed that to others who joined LearnX who are not part of the network. I love how data that move us and bridging the talent gap are bringing usable knowledge to everyone. And I hope you will all read the comeback story and follow the bridging the talent gap work and perhaps bring it to your communities. And I'm really so impressed with the new Bridging the Talent Gap tool. I'm really inspired to see the representation across the country. I saw many people who are not formally network communities, but came here to share and learn and teach. And the DEI work that is just starting, I really wanted to note that. And thanks again to Josh and Walmart for funding it. It is really close to my heart as Sally and Cedric and Josh, and I hope the team in Philadelphia have seen over the years. Because equity and justice have been my chief drivers since before I joined Sally and David to create Graduate, and before we started using the word equity, which I think is absolutely the right word for the issues we've been wrestling with for so long. I've watched the language change. I've always believed in asking people what words they're comfortable with using about themselves and what words they're comfortable with me using. And the terminology is now converging, and I think that's a good thing. Hopefully it makes for more clarity. The conversations in the breakout room I was in, the conversation was a little bit hesitant still. I think we didn't know each other very well, and these conversations about race and power really need to build on trust. But I think this past year has been a good start. And lastly, I keep coming back to that. We collectively are driving a movement, and it's multifaceted. It's not one simple thing, but equity, learning, evolution, and completion are a few good terms that kept echoing in my head this LearnX.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. This LearnX has been an experience on every level for all of us, trying to do things differently, but capture the spirit of who we are as a community. When we've been talking over the last, how long has it been now that we've been sort of working side by side, maybe 3 months. One of the things that's been so fun about this was to sort of the trips down memory lane. The way that we thought we would do this today when we were pre-talking was if you would share some of your aha moments, sort of the big moments for you during the evolution of the network.
Sure. So I think the first aha moment, and Sally, you were, I think, in Egypt when you called to tell me was when the Knight Foundation funded us.
Yeah.
It was a long shot. It was really our moonshot. And we, you know, sweated over it a lot because I knew that, that if we asked for a large enough sum from Knight, the program officer, who was completely on our side and very supportive, but he would have to take it to their board.
Right.
And I knew that on the Knight board at the time were some presidents of major universities, and I wanted them to hear our proposal. I wanted, and these are universities that were not very proactive about comebackers. I'd
Right.
known some of them from previous work, and I absolutely wanted this idea to be in front of them. And you know what? That board voted unanimously to support our proposal at that time. And that's when I had my aha moment that this is a thing, that we had struck on a pain point and had found a way to make change for, at the time, we were just thinking of Philadelphia, which is, I don't know, 300,000 people. But that was the first aha moment. The second one was when the mayors of Philadelphia, Michael Nutter, and Chicago, Mayor Daley, adopted the idea. And then the third one was when we came to Louisville. Kathy, I think you arranged that. And we were sitting there around the table. There were representatives, I think, from the 3 or 4 first sites. And Louisville had a different approach, and we were talking about how to integrate the two approaches. And then it was this aha moment of, we can really build this together and make it better with every iteration. And then the LearnX in Memphis, the first time we held LearnX outside of Philadelphia, and we felt it was real. Now we are really a national movement.
Yep.
After that came, you know, a part of my personal journey to health and living with some residual disability. And, you know, I was faced at the time with these social norms of keeping things from the people around you, from some colleagues, from your employers. I realized that this is part of what many of our comebackers face every day, that they have to hide a deep and true part of themselves in order to get ahead in academia and finish college and function in the world of work. And that for me was, I had known it, but now I felt it. And now I live with it. Like so many of our comebackers, there's something that you have to wrestle with, and it's very physical, very emotional, very psychological, that you have to overcome every single day. It's not just one single barrier. And we've listed all the barriers, but I know that many of our comebackers wrestle with these issues every single day. And it's made me so appreciative of the journey back to and through college. The next big aha moment was the Advisor Summit. Not just the dancing, which I think Kathy led and was awesome, and the music and the energy, but the fact that we had a wait list, that not everyone who wanted to attend, we just couldn't, we didn't have the capacity, and that people were so hungry for inclusion and for knowing and for learning and for sharing. It was just one of the brightest moments. And if any of you were there, I hope you reflect upon it as fondly as I do. And I still draw upon that for energy and ideas. And then finally, you know, the growth of the network, stepping back, it just makes me realize that we together, everyone on this call, everyone throughout the network, we've built something powerful.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to think about it. I remember last year when I was at LearnX, which was in Philadelphia, leaving at a break and going outside and calling David and just saying, like, you just wouldn't believe it. You should be here, because just watching the energy in the room, it's sometimes amazing to step back and think, wow, like just sort of the three of us in a diner, you know, and this is a thing, and people are visible because of the work that you have done. Obviously, we're in this moment of transition. And so there's this question that I think we all grapple with, which is what comes next, right? And we're in this moment that, I mean, when we were planning for this, we didn't also expect a global pandemic. We didn't expect, we certainly didn't anticipate the kind of economic transformation that we have experienced nearly overnight. And we didn't expect to be in this space, even when we launched our DEI work, which was, the right work at the right time. I don't think we certainly couldn't have appreciated or anticipated how right the time would be to have planned for these kinds of conversations. And at the same time, we have a lot of sites that are struggling. They've gotten National Foundation funds that are maybe coming to an end. And we're trying to think, this is the opportunity to reflect as a network, as the Graduate Network, about the way in which we support our sites. So as you know, Hadass, after this session, we're going to be going into small breakouts, and we're going to be asking our communities to answer some questions that are along the lines of what I'm going to be asking you. So everybody who's here should start thinking about what you might say. And we have our board lined up. We're very excited. They'll be with us in those breakouts. So this is something that we take very, very seriously at the network, obviously. But to get that started, just one thing, you can say more than one thing. In the breakouts, we'll just ask for one thing. But what's the one thing you think that we could be doing to support the current work of our communities?
I think maintaining the momentum of LearnX, the sharing, so people can build on what other people across the network are doing, and draw from each other. I think that is the main thing.
Great, great. And then the next thing that we wanted to ask, so that's for today, that's the current work. And then there's this question of sustainability. As I mentioned, I think a lot of sites always struggle. There are no natural resources for adults. That's a big issue. Maybe something that we ought to be working on changing. Something that we've certainly talked about at the board. But what is one thing, absent that, that we could be doing related to sustainability for our sites?
So this is the multi-million-dollar question, right?
Right.
And it really is tough, and it's getting tougher, in part because of our success. So now comebackers are a thing, and it's a market, and there's a market of online providers that is just exploding right now, mm-hmm. with a lot of investment funds.
Yep.
Which, and there are these ed techs who are finding and serving comebackers, and the higher eds that are partnering with them. So it's become a huge, very visible market. But the fact remains that this is a 40 million person problem, the comebacker issue. And while ed tech is not a silver bullet solution, the funding and the attention is coalescing around ed tech.
Right.
And I know, I hear that many of the communities are facing, really harsh realities with diminishing funding streams. And so this is a puzzle. How do we mesh these things together? Right. How do we, maybe our role is to create some sort of accountability measure for these ed techs. Maybe it's to partner with some of them, partner very strategically. I think more engagement at board levels is one part of the solution, more advocacy. I think there's a community-specific and a collective strategy here that should not be put solely on the shoulders of the directors. And I've been pretty vocal about that. I'd love to see stronger boards for each community and more representation at the network, on the network's board, so we can think together about what sustainability, how sustainability can be achieved. But there's also, a social and political context that right now is not arcing favorably towards post-secondary degree. Although all the hard data still points to college degrees as door openers for, people who've not historically had access to better jobs. And not at just the mega employers or even the smaller and mid-sized employers that Bridging the Talent Gap looks at, but also in higher ed itself. comebackers who graduate are probably the best change makers we have for higher ed. And I'd love to see more be hired and climb the leadership ladder all the way to the provost and president's offices. Aaron Thompson is one stellar example, and we need more similar to him, bringing new perspectives to these leadership offices. So maybe the graduate network could be a game changer in that way as well.
That would be spectacular, and I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think one of the things that we saw in Philadelphia over the years is that really spectacular board members have stepped up to help sustainability, to have been advocates. We've not seen him on the program, but Pat Eiting, who is who runs the local AFL-CIO, has been such a great leader for us over the years in Philadelphia, and has helped to negotiate as a board member of or a partner both in Graduate in the early days and a board member at Independence Blue Cross, one of our longest standing employer partnerships. I mean, that was about him opening doors, and the work with City Council and other sorts of places that have supported those dollars. And I think that you can't understate the importance of having leadership that's focused on this, on these issues, sitting in a community and really actively engaged in the sustainability and the programs. We have a session this afternoon that talks about sustainability from the perspective, not of our perspective, but from the folks who are impact investors and employers. And I think that I think I'll be facilitating it, and we will be asking questions that get to, I think, some of these very same answers, and hopefully give us a nice path forward in terms of how the network can support our communities moving forward in ways that are far more or very proactive and help them address this time. Another question we'll be asking is about growth, right? So we talked about sustainability. There's this question about like sort of market penetration. There are lots of communities around the country where we have comebackers and no services. And so just your thought on how we might think about that differently, or things that we as a network or a community of networks, or a network of communities can do to help ensure that every comebacker has access to services.
So you're right, there are a lot of places and states that are now working on lifting up comebackers. And what I see is, again, a marketplace that is diverging. And for me, that means there are a lot of overlaps. And in a marketplace where resources are so limited, that points to me to maybe opportunities to synthesize. And so I would love to see more the growth kind of being woven together. So it's not, Walmart doing one thing and Lumina funding a network. And now I think Shio has a network, and there are a lot of these networks, and I think growth will come when we're all pulling together, understanding the landscape and where our strengths are, instead of investing money where weaknesses are. Let someone else who has a strength in that area lead.
Okay, thank you. So we have two other questions that we'll be asking our community. Just a reminder to be thinking about your own answers to this. So we've talked a lot, you and I have talked a lot about the barriers that comebackers face. There's been a lot of things that we've talked about over the course of LearnX, but also this has been a big strand of work that we've done over the years. And I'm curious, if you had to pick one barrier that comebackers face that requires collective action, right, that we should move nationally, what would your top barrier be for us to work to ameliorate?
So I have two. One is a policy change at the very high level, and that is at the U.S. Department of Education. I think moving to block predatory practices. And that may require a change of administration. The other thing that I think is doable is the issue of withholding transcripts and wiping out small amounts of debt. And you know, I've always said that policies that prevent someone from finishing a degree because they owe $200 or $1,000 is like cutting off your nose to spite your face. It's barring someone from getting a better job so that they can pay back
Right.
their debt and they can pay tuition and move forward. It just doesn't make sense. And you know, there's a market angle here again. We've seen with other policies that higher eds are very tuned to what others are doing. So now Wayne State and a few others have started writing off these debts. And I think the moment is right for not just lifting those up, but having conversations with presidents and provosts in all of the circles that the graduate network is in about the power of debt forgiveness to drive up their enrollments.
Yeah. Sarah just put in the chat that California's just created a state policy making holding transcripts illegal.
Woohoo!
Yay.
Thank you.
So maybe we're there. So maybe we can work on that for a while and the you know, kind of get on the tide and call it a win. But no, I agree with that completely. And we saw that from the very early days, right? That there are just financial policies that don't seem to make sense and are very, just not calibrated to support our comebackers and just generally people who don't always have resources, right, to complete a degree.
Right.
And then the last question I wanted to ask was, and I know this is something very near and dear to you, and so the next story or the next data story that we need to tell.
So there's so many ways that comebacker stories are being told now, and I love seeing them pop up over my social media feed and conferences. But we need to get them into communities, into rooms where policies are drafted and made. And we have the data. With data that move us and bridging the talent gap, we will continue to have more and more nuance and more insight. I think we have to do better at telling the stories in places where it's not being heard. You know, the old saying of skate to where the puck will be. There are communities, there are places, there are people who've not yet heard these stories of success and why it's important to invest in comebackers. So I think that should be the direction, not in the mainstream. I think the mainstream pretty much gets the story.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate this all, and as you know, and you've heard from me so many times, and the board has heard from me and the team. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to work with you this way, and that you have trusted me with working with you on this transition. I also want everybody to know that you're not really going away. You know, you'll be back. You'll be coming on the board, and of course, you know, we've been partners for 16 years, so you don't get rid of me that easily. But in the few minutes that we have remaining before we go to our sessions, I just want you to be able to close whatever advice you've got for me, for us, anything that you want to say here. Just the floor is yours.
Thank you. This movement that we're all part of is on the right side of equity and justice, of social change, economic growth, the fight against racism. We have a lot of creativity and really smart people in this movement, and we need to keep listening and learning from each other. Each person here can find their niche, what's comfortable for them, where they can push against discomfort, and together just keep the work going. Thank you.
Thank you.